Ever feel like you're ready to start your own company? Like you're ready to hold the reins on your own work-life culture? Welcome to Smart Driven Women. I'm Rona Job. Here, impactful leaders and entrepreneurs come to share how they navigate their complex careers and personal lives. Our guest today is Lisa Angulo Reid. She is the co-founder and CEO of Dear Flor, the first Filipino-owned cannabis company creating gummies inspired by iconic Filipino flavors like ube, calamansi, and buko pandan. Founded by Lisa and her husband Brian, Dear Flor has a simple mission: to share Filipino culture with the world, one flavor at a time. Lisa spent more than 20 years in advertising and marketing, leading transformative work for some of the world's most trusted consumer brands. After years of building brands for others, she decided it was time to build her own. She is also the creator of 100 Ways to Filipino, a storytelling platform that includes a podcast, Substack, and the 100 Ways to Filipino Founders Network, which she founded as well with her husband Brian. The initiative aims to double the number of Filipino-American businesses in the United States over the next 5 years. Lisa is a longtime advocate for visibility and representation. She has built and led ERGs for Asian identifying colleagues at 2 companies and organized landmark events uplifting Asian leaders through Chief. She is also a recipient of the Filipino-American National Historical Society of Metro New York's award for contributions to excellence with the Filipino-American community. Lisa lives in Greenwich Village, New York, with her husband Brian, their 2 children, and their Pomsky, Leo. Lisa, welcome to Smart Driven Women.
Thank you for having me, Rona.
Amazing. We're going to start off with some rapid fire questions as we usually do. Are you ready for it?
Sure, bring it on.
Awesome. Coffee or tea in the morning?
I'm back on the wagon with coffee after 2 years of no coffee.
What's the last book you finished?
Oh my God, it's a garbage book. Because I always have one garbage book and like one real book, or if I'm reading something heavy. So I reread one of the Bridgerton books. The latest one.
Is it the season 4 one?
The season 4 one, yes, I reread that one. So yeah, that was the last book that I actually completed.
Awesome. She is human, y'all. One word to describe your leadership style.
Real.
Favorite app on your phone?
Favorite app in my phone? Lately it's been Threads, if you can believe that.
Awesome. Podcast or audiobooks?
Oh, podcast. I can't listen to books.
Who's a professional role model for you?
Gosh, professional's always been a little personal for me. I would say probably my Lola, because she was just like, she was fiery. That's the, she was something else.
One cause you are passionate about?
Filipino Americans.
Of course. Mountains. What else?
What else would it be?
Mountains or beach for vacation?
Oh, mountains for sure.
Best career advice you've ever received?
Never leave your seat at the table. And if you do, don't leave it without a fight.
Love that. I'm going to have to write that down afterwards. What trend in your industry excites you the most right now?
Probably hyper targeting when it comes to communities, right? When you think about how fragmented we've become and how big, I don't understand the point of targeting huge masses of people, because it feels very pray and spray to me. Mm-hmm. If I can't connect in very real ways with people, you have to ask yourself, is this juice worth the squeeze? And it really is, unless you've got massive amounts of money to throw at the problem. Yeah.
And I feel like when you're targeting such a large, quote unquote, target audience, you really have to have the depth and, the resources essentially, which is not always ideal for almost any startups or any company, any small business, any small company that's just starting out.
No, we're not here to be one and done, right? So like, what are we going to do? Blow, what is it? 5 million, 10 million on a Super Bowl ad and they never see us again? Like, what's the point of that?
Right. Great insight. All right, let's jump right into it.
Okay.
Smart Driven Women. Before you started your professional career journey, Did you consider yourself driven? When do you think it started?
Oh, I think I've always been driven, even when I didn't know what being driven was about. It could be something as simple as just wanting to go out and like play and how do I figure out how to get things, right?
Yeah.
Um yeah, I think I've always innately been driven. I mean, case in point, I remember the summer after my sophomore year of college, right? Most people when I was going to college would do internships and stay at school or go travel to some place, after their junior year, but I decided, I was going to do it my sophomore year. And I thought first, like, what were the barriers my parents might have to that? One could be like the expense because you have to pay for a
Hmm.
place to live over the summer. And how are you going
Right.
to eat? Because it was the 90s. They didn't pay interns back then.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I had to find a place to live. I had to figure out how I was going to eat. And it had to be an internship that they could not possibly say no to. Right. Too
Mm.
good for them to be like, how do we say no? Right.
This
Um,
was your
and
sophomore year in
this was
college,
my
or
sophomore year of college. And I'm really going to date myself here. This is back when people still had America Online, AOL, like the
yeah,
dial
yeah,
up with a little, like they were not discs anymore. They were CDs at the time.
yeah,
But the point is, they were still giving out that stuff and people were loading it in and dialing
get
in where
free
they're
three
like noise
months.
modems, get 3 months free. And then we
Yeah.
charge you up the yin yang, right? If you go over. Um, so they were launching cities because I remember Microsoft had like MSN like cities, and so this was digital cities for New York, Boston, and I can't remember what the other cities were. Probably someplace in California. And so I was in Boston, and this internship came up, and I'm like, okay, if I get this, there's no way they're going to be able to say no to this. And so applied for the internship, got the internship, and then the next problem was, okay, where do I live? Well, they had jobs on campus. So I could get a dorm, but a couple nights a week, I would have to sit there and be like reception for the guests that they would rent the dorm rooms out to. And
Hmm.
so I ended up getting that job. It paid nothing but the housing. So I still had the money problem for the food. At
Yeah.
that point, they were just like, well, you know what? You're going to have to eat. You managed to get free housing. You managed to get, the job. So we will send you a couple, 100 a month so that you have food for the 3 months. I'm like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I would say that just it's kind of innate.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like it wasn't, you had a goal and you're like, ah, we'll figure it out. That's the drive there. Well, step by step, we'll
Yeah,
figure it out.
I think, and it drives my husband, who is also my business partner, up a freaking wall because when I get it in my head that I really want to do something and I've convinced myself that this is something that we really need to do, like I can break through walls, I can tear down buildings, I could probably like command a ship if need be. It's just kind of how I am.
Do you think there's much that's changed since you were a sophomore in college than,
Lord, no. I
yeah,
mean, for better, for worse, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
no, I don't think so. At least not in that regard. Anyway.
What advice do you think you have for folks that are like, I struggle with what do I do step by step? I know what my goal is. I know where I want to be. I know what passion I have, but there's a lot of people that are kind of frozen at like, okay, but no, I can't do that first step because to do that first step, I have to do this first and this. How would you break down kind of like your thought pattern or the way that you would approach something that you really want to do, like do the internship?
Yeah. I mean, so for me, like it's really easy if that thing that I want to do has a purpose, right? And let's be fair, like not everything has like some big, bold purpose attached to it, right?
Right.
But I think the one thing that is true for anything, anything is, how do you atomize it into fragments, right?
Mm.
You're not going to be able to conquer the world in one go. You're going to have to take it over country by country or city by city, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
It's the same thing is true for like, that's how we think about like media planning or even just distribution. Like, where do we want to go first? Right? Do we try and like, sure, we launched Dear Flor in 50 states, but we were very strategic about where we wanted to like be present for events. Like we had to go to California, right? That's
Hmm.
the state with the most Filipinos in the
Hmm.
country, right? New York is in our backyard. How do we not? We studied Chicago. We studied, what we see emerging in Texas. We wanted to understand the dynamics of Las Vegas. And so if you pick it off one by one, it's way less daunting, right? But as you decide which one you're going to tackle first, you have to weigh, what are you going to gain by choosing to do this one first? And what are you trading off by not selecting the next one? So, the trade off that we made in selecting California and New York first is most Filipinos. Let's just start there, right? The
Right.
trade off is, are we ignoring middle America? Are we ignoring the South? Yes, we are, but we knew strategically that if we had buy in from New York and California, word travels fast amongst our
Yep.
community. And
It
so,
does.
and then you keep going. So that would be my advice.
Yeah. Was the internship related to media, and how did you find yourself into media from college?
So it's interesting. I went to college. My majors were, I doubled with English and political science. But then when you break down what I actually did, right, nothing practical in either one of them. Political
Yeah.
science, I was way more interested in political philosophy. Um, English, while everybody was studying like either modern writers or like British romantic, poets.
Mhm.
Sure, they were great. I was really into like Beowulf and like Chaucer, old English, like really old dead, like British
Yeah.
guys. And so you know, that for me, I was on the track to do one of two things. I was actually much more interested in going into publishing at that point in
Oh.
time. I wanted to, I was writing a lot at that time. A lot of creative nonfiction, a lot of just like articles kind of stuff. Worked on, things like the school magazine for like Asians. Like it just did that. I was very much interested in the making of written content. So when I graduated, I was just like, okay, well, I've got a degree that's focused on writing creative nonfiction, really old dead British dudes, and then political philosophy. Like, what do I do with this? Okay, let's go explore jobs in two areas, publishing and I said, what the hell? Let's look at advertising and work in agencies. And what was really sucky about that point in time is that if you didn't have internships in either, it was impossible to get a job unless you came in as a secretary.
Mm.
And so that's what I did. I ended up getting a job working as an administrative assistant on the new business team. And so my 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 was like find people, shove them into meetings, book travel, do expenses, book lunch. But after 5 o'clock, if you were into it, you could actually stay and become part of the pitch team. And so I think in the first year, and like, so funny, things have changed so much because they actually care about young people getting rest now. But I think my hours were like, it wasn't uncommon for me to work from 8 to 4, go home, maybe nap for an hour, and get up and do it again. So, like, I think I probably worked a total of anywhere from like 18 to 20-hour days, depending on how crazy. And that's not like, it's not even a humble brag. There was just the reality of what you
Yeah.
did. I mean, also attached to that is when you're in those jobs, nobody's paying you shit. So um, there was a lot of overtime attached to that. I think my starting salary was $21,500. My ending salary after all the overtime was probably around 35, 36K
Mm.
after
That
that year.
hustle.
But like, that's how you learned. I
Yeah.
learned a lot about how pitch meetings are put together. I learned a lot about creative strategy. I learned about how these strategies become ideas, right? We pitched everything from Sony to the Olympics. Some we won, some were heartbreaking, but um it cemented my desire to actually work in something that was creative but very much attached to business, right? And so I guess that was kind of my entry into media. So I didn't quite know that that was what I wanted to do. I actually thought I'd be going down a more creative track, but at some point, um, one, I don't think I had the constitution to be told your ideas suck. Very early on, but again, that being able to kind of see all of the connection points, the bigger story of which creative was just one piece of it. I think that's what I learned about myself in that first year of working.
It sounds like you also found some passion that really fueled your drive too in a lot of these different projects.
Well, I think part of it was, yes, there was the intellectual challenge of trying to
Mhm.
make seeing great creative ideas kind of come to life and what goes into a little bit of that show, right? Because new business, a pitch is a show, especially when you get to the end of it, right? From your how do you enter the room? What is your calling card or introduction to
Mm,
this is what the meeting's going to be about? Watching in the background some of these great leaders actually navigate some of these crazy questions, like how do you it was very what I loved most was, yes, it was hard work, but it was fun and I had a lot of fun working with folks. I was also surrounded by a lot of people like my age, right, working hard and just having a shitload of fun at that time,
mm,
and then watching these people that we could potentially grow up to be.
yeah.
um that was kind of a lovely like front row seat to something that I probably would not have gotten if I had been on another team. It would have taken
Mm,
5 years for me to
yeah.
get to that seat.
So it was a hustle culture. We didn't make a lot of money and it was a lot of work, essentially.
It
Were
was.
you ever like, what am I doing here? Why am I working this hard? Or maybe that wasn't even a question that had popped up.
I mean, I think because the work felt rewarding, right? Because they kept giving me really good assignments. And it was still like an era, if you worked hard enough and you had, some level of, and you were smart, right, you could rise pretty quickly. And um it was kind of crazy. I don't know that the question ever crossed my mind, because the work that I was doing felt like satisfied my intellectual curiosity. I'm really bad at being bored, so I was definitely not bored.
Hmm.
Honestly, if you want me to do the same thing forever, just make sure I don't get bored with that task. And so I think at that point in time I was working on Colgate Palmolive, and it was their global business. And it's kind of wild. It's the same brand, but the consumers change market by market,
Hmm.
right? And I think I worked on pretty much every market with the exception of the US, which was wild because I was based here in the US.
Mm,
So worked with a global business, worked with the regional clients, worked on global campaigns. And yeah, I mean, once you figure out the client piece of business, you get to, have a hand in thinking about how do you grow your business within the agency, right?
yeah.
And so after I kind of mastered the global business piece of it, I ended up becoming chief of staff to the CEO of our agency. At that point in time, the Colgate business was so big, we pretty much created a bespoke agency just for that client.
Mm,
And it was made up of different agencies within WPP. And so, kind of cracking how to build an integrated team across, four different independent agencies with different cultures, right? But the business is still the business, right? That hasn't
right.
changed. How do you do that seamlessly? That for me was kind of a great learning exercise in just management, right? How do you like build this business? And so that allowed me to kind of, yes, the client work was always front and center, but like, how do you actually build things to support what your clients need? Like, that was just a different way of looking at the business. And so my mind kind of moved from loving the creative, which I never stopped loving, just learning to love just the creativity that I found in building agencies, right? And so I think that for me kept me from asking that question. And I mean,
Mm,
as I look back on it, and hindsight is 2020,
mhm.
there's a danger in that too, right?
Yeah.
Because again, like, keep me interested, I can keep going, but then you have to ask yourself as you look back, maybe did I stay too long? And I think that's a realization that I've started to come to terms with, because I have time to process that now.
Yeah. Yeah. Hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
But it sounds like from then on, you were able to build Dear Flor then.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I had a stop, another role in between. Like I left agencies back in 2022. Ended up taking a role with a tech company that was based in the Bay, but I was working fully remotely with the rest of the marketing team. So was leading brand marketing there for 2 years. And um, what's really interesting is that we actually started Dear Flor the January before I left the agency and
Hmm.
joined this company. But at that point in time, like it was still a kernel of an idea. We were still like Brian and I were still kind of working through the what kind of company do we want to build. We knew that we wanted a company that was rooted in two things, like Filipino culture, cannabis, because we
Mhm.
just knew, like, when you look at the Venn diagram of people who love cannabis and people who love Filipino culture, food, people, what have you, it's literally like another circle. It's like, so we're just kind of like, we need to figure out how we tap into this. And so, that first year, 2022, it was really about trying to outline like what did we want if we're going to actually do this, like if I were going to leave my corporate job and build my own company, like what kind of company do we want to build. Once we tackled that, we thought about, okay, let's really focus on the products that we want to create, the flavors, the textures, what is the story behind this,
Yeah.
right? Because we have company first, how do the products support that, and then late 2022 we were actually in a place where we could start making the product, and we went into R&D for about 8 months, trying to get the flavors, the textures, the packaging right before we're ready for launch. And we finally launched. This is when we were in California only because we were in the state license program. We were finally ready to launch in California during Filipino American History Month. So that was October 2023.
To be a
So
fly in the wall during like your dinner time or something, the conversations, or were you able to sort of keep the personal and professional conversations separate?
I don't think I've ever been good at that.
Yeah.
Just speaking very transparently. And um, goodness, ask my kids what our dinner conversations are about.
What would they say? What would
Oh
they
my
say if
gosh.
I
Well, I
asked
mean,
them?
like I don't know about you, but like my parents didn't really talk much about work. Right. Even when they were working together, you would have a quick blurb about like, well, so and so, came in, blah, blah, blah. We need to take
Yeah.
care of this tomorrow.
It
And that
was
was
very
it.
separate back then.
It was very, very separate. I mean, for us, like, oh my God, it's gotten to the point now where the kids are like, how is the R&D for that flavor coming along? Did you get your samples in? Because they'll hear me, like, where's our samples? Or, we're in the midst, when we were in the midst of a fundraise and we're just jumping into, a new one now. Um, my son will be like, "Oh, did you get the investor? How did your investor call go today?" Because they know what's going on. It's really kind of fascinating because I didn't grow up with parents that my parents were medical folks. Even when they
Hmm.
had the office and the day-to-day running of the office, it was just different versus running a startup. And so
Yeah.
some of the questions, like I didn't have any exposure to any of this at all. So I mean, they're kind of getting a front row seat to what it takes to like build. And sometimes it gets messy, like if Brian and I disagree, we don't always agree on everything, right?
Right.
So it's literally like back and forth. And then we're like, okay, let's just pause this and we can carry on with this conversation after dinner. But yeah, like it gets interesting.
What is that like working with your spouse on like in a company?
You know what? I feel like thank God we have complementary skill sets, right? He is very much finance and operations. I'm very much marketing, and who knew, like it's now marketing and sales. If you'd asked me like 5 years ago, you're going to have to like sell, and I'd be like, "Ugh."
Ugh.
But like this is just, like I don't want to be a salesman. But it's just it is part and parcel of, the role, right?
Yeah.
If the CEO can't sell this product, then who the hell is going to,
Well,
right?
someone told me also that for us that are non-sales people, right? We think of sales in like a very specific way, but somebody said, just talk about your passion, talk about why you do what you do, talk about
That is
what it
exactly right.
solves, and that's
It
it.
that's it. I mean, like, yeah, exactly. I would hear sales and be like, oh God, I'm gonna have to go take a bath
Ugh,
if I have
yeah.
to do this. But like, that is exactly right. Like, if you're talking about things that you love and why you love this product and why you made this product and why it's so freaking important and why this is so much bigger than just gummies,
Hmm.
right? That is the easiest sales job I could do because it hits all of my passion points. Um, and it just so happens to be something that we're trying to sell, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it's funny. And then from a product standpoint, we both like we do all the competitive testing, we do all of the product testing through R&D because, I never understood folks who could outsource and, like, okay, let's go. Like that's just not who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. For a lot of these smart driven women listening, they sometimes tend to ask and wonder, if I wanted to do or get into the seat that you're in now, what advice would you have for them? And these are for the younger, I should say, smart driven women.
Oh goodness, I go back and forth on this one. One, on the whole notion of imposter syndrome, yes, it's real. But
Mm-hmm.
the one thing that you have to tell yourself is 9 times out of 10, especially if you're a woman of color, these rooms didn't have people like you in them. So who are you pretending to be?
Yeah.
So what I guess what I'm trying to say, it doesn't matter, right? If you're in the room, you're in the room, which goes back to my original piece of work advice is don't never ever leave your seat at the table, not without a fight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
come in present, come in as you, because you wouldn't be there if you weren't you, right? And sometimes you're the first one like you in there. So, relish that moment, have some fun with it. Um, because, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't be in there if you weren't you. I think that's the key. I think the second piece is really like you have to if you're going to embark in this journey because it's not easy. It is super important that you know who you are. You have to know what you like, but even more importantly, you have to know what you don't like, what is not acceptable to you. Because, like, the moment you start negotiating those things that are unacceptable to you, you've made your job a lot less fun, a lot
Mm-hmm.
less rewarding, and a lot less intentional. So, I would say probably that's even more important advice than the first thing I
Yeah.
said. I think those two things are most critical.
Intentionality.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you
Yeah. The
start
moment.
crossing boundaries that you've created, then that
Yeah.
goes out the window.
Exactly. Exactly. Why would you want to do things that you don't like?
Life's
Right?
too
How
short.
much money is it worth to you like to make these compromises? I mean, like, look, there's always some level of compromise involved, but like there are things that are absolute non-negotiables. Like we
Yeah.
turned down investors during our first friends and family raise because for us, one of the non-negotiables was um we must be able to know that we can take the advice of this person and
Mhm.
either one implement it or two, push back and discuss it, and possibly even three, not do it at all. Um, and then the second part to that is we had to have the feeling that they had the same kind of understanding with us,
Mhm.
because if we can't have that level of dialogue, we have no business taking their money
Yeah.
at all.
I like that you
So
said that there are compromises to be made sometimes, and you do
there
have
are.
to compromise, but you should know what your non-negotiables are. You should know what lines you're not going to cross, because that then erodes, your company's North Star, your
Our
intentionality that
credibility,
you
like
want to,
what
yeah.
it's not what you stand for anymore. It's some kind of adulterated, thing that you said you were, right, but aren't quite anymore, right?
Yeah. Yeah. How do you then differentiate between what is non-negotiable versus what is compromisable, because you see a lot of language out there on social media about boundaries being drawn, but I see very little about how to determine what should be a hard boundary versus what is, something that could be compromised on.
Absolutely. I think it really, the non-negotiables are value driven, right? Let's be very real. Like as much as I love logos, branding, colors, like color is negotiable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's not this purple. Maybe it's green. Like that, like sure. I'm not going to like die on a hill unless I truly feel strategically it's the wrong thing to do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Dear Flor um is colorful. I would not turn it into a black and white brand. It doesn't fit, right? Our values. But, certain colors, sure, we can talk about. But like value in and of itself, like, can I listen to you? If the answer is no, probably not a good idea. Like that is a non-negotiable.
Mm.
Um, Trying to stuff us with product ideas that don't fit our mission, right? Again, like these are things that are determined at a company level before we even make products. Like our company is about sharing Filipino culture with the world. If that product or service idea does not fit that mission, like that is a non-negotiable. We will not do this, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
would be like telling me to produce a line of life straws that were branded Dear Flor. I mean, give me enough time, I might be able to find a way to make that work strategically, but on the offset, like doesn't quite fit for me. We're not here to save lives. We're not here because we've got a mission to provide clean drinking water. We want something that is definitely not as lofty as like saving people and making sure they have clean water. We're trying to share culture. It's just a very different thing. So that would be a non-negotiable, right? I'm sure there's a third. Give me time. But I think those two are illustrative enough, right?
Yeah, yeah. Do you find that the values that Dear Flor holds are also very similar to the personal values that you and Brian hold?
Absolutely. We've poured ourselves into this. Like was having a conversation around purpose with someone at Chief. And the question I was asked is like, what advice do you have for founders that want to, build a purpose driven business? And my belief is that it starts with you.
Yeah.
You
That's the soul
cannot
of the company,
just you
essentially.
cannot force fit this in, right? It's not to say that, if you started with a product and you want to come in and like fit your purpose in, of course you can do it with enough money and with enough um focus, right? It is possible to alter the culture of your company so that it actually has this purpose that drives whatever product you're trying to sell. It's a hell of a lot simpler if you start with that purpose from the get-go,
Yeah.
right? And so, yeah, like I would say there, it starts with you. If you don't have it, that's okay. You need to think about what it is that you stand for and want. Anything that you make, anything that comes out of your body. I mean, like your products are not unlike your children,
Hmm.
right? Um, what values do you want them all to have? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing advice. I mean, find out what your values are, what your North Star is, and what your boundaries are from there, and figure out the steps to get there.
yeah,
So, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. I mean, I've learned so many great things, not just about you, but also who you are as a person and who you are as a founder. Are there any organizations, before we say goodbye, are there any organizations you'd like listeners to support, to
absolutely.
listen, to follow, that is also near and dear to your heart?
Two organizations, and not surprisingly, they are Filipino American organizations. The first one is FONS, the Filipino American National Historical Society. There's the national organization, but every city has its own chapter. Um, I'm big believers in the work that they are doing because if we as Filipino Americans do not know our history, how do we expect the rest of this country to do the same? And so the work that they're
Yeah.
doing is helping to make that possible. The second organization that I have a lot of love for is House of Gongs. They're based in the Bay. founded by Ron and Lydia Carrion. It is all about helping, Filipinos in the diaspora learn about Kolintang music, which is the gongs, right?
Mm,
Which are found all over the Philippines, north, south. And you learn it through traditional practitioners. So they will bring them. So they have an annual festival that they do. They'll bring practitioners from the Philippines, so traditional musicians,
yeah.
but they'll also have, DJs who are mixing Kolintang music into it. Other artists, they had Carl Angelo, who, if you've heard PTI, um, they've had Ruby Ibarra do their first one. It's
Mhm.
it's phenomenal. So those two definitely love.
Amazing. And how can folks get in touch with you after today?
Oh my gosh. So they can certainly connect with me on LinkedIn. They should also connect or follow us on Instagram at Love Dear Flor. And then if they're into reading about everything from Filipino American founder culture to things that I just like to talk about that are relevant to Filipino Americans in our culture, they should check out our Substack, 100 Ways to Filipino. That's at dearflor.substack.com. And of course, check out our gummies at dearflor.com.
Lisa, thank you again. Thank you for joining us on Smart Driven Women. And until next time.
Thank you so much for having me. Always fun, Rana.